Welcome to today's deep dive. If you're listening to this as a learner, you're probably pretty used to absorbing some really dense, complex information.
Oh, absolutely. Learning usually feels like, tackling a mountain.
Right. But today's mission, it's really about the beauty of absolute simplicity. Because usually when we talk about human communication, there is this expectation of complexity, like it's some sort of high wire act.
Yeah, it can feel incredibly performative, like you're constantly on stage or something.
Exactly. Like you've got to use the exact right vocabulary, the perfect grammatical structure, and, all these nuanced cultural references just to
get your point across at all.
Right. We think we need to be Shakespeare just to, I don't know, buy a cup of coffee or greet a neighbor.
It's also just thinking about it.
It really is. I always think textbook communication is a lot like wearing a stiff, formal tuxedo to a backyard barbecue. It's just too much. Oh. Or it's like driving a manual transmission car in heavy stop-and-go traffic.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right, because you're constantly thinking about the clutch, the gears.
The RPMs.
Yes, you're so focused on the mechanics of the machine that you barely have the cognitive bandwidth to actually look at the scenery.
That is a perfect way to look at it. And it's comforting, in a way, to hide behind that complexity. I mean, we like to think that having a massive vocabulary equals intelligence or depth. Mm-hmm. We want to show off the engine.
But then you step into the actual, invisible architecture of how human beings connect on a daily basis, and suddenly that high wire act, that tuxedo, looks completely unnecessary.
Yeah, it's overkill.
Totally. So today, we're looking at a conversational framework that strips human connection down to its absolute bare studs. We're grounding this deep dive in excerpts from a source called The Foundation of Daily English, Simple Conversation Practice.
Which is really about the ultimate automatic transmission for social interaction.
Exactly. On its surface, it's this incredibly straightforward guide meant to help language learners, but we are not going to read it like a textbook. We're going to deconstruct it. We're going to explore how this source throws out all the textbook complexity, the difficult grammar, and focuses purely on, real English for daily life.
And that's a crucial distinction, right? Defining what constitutes real English versus textbook English is really an exercise in understanding human psychology.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the deep dive begins right where all human interaction begins.
Making contact.
Yes, making contact without the paralyzing stress of perfection. The source highlights the absolute essentials of a greeting. We've got hello, hi, and hey.
The big three.
The big three, and it explicitly notes that hi and hey are, classified as more casual.
Right out of the gate, it establishes a hierarchy of formality, but an incredibly flat one.
Right.
It's not giving you 50 different localized idioms or deeply complex ways to address someone based on their social standing. It's giving you 3 universal tools to open a door.
And once the door is open, it moves to the daily status check. The standard exchange is laid out meticulously here. One person says, "How are you?"
And the response?
The response is, "I'm good, thank you." And you? And the reply comes back, "I'm good too."
Very clean. Very simple.
Yeah, or alternatively, it offers, "How is your day?" Or "How is your day going?" With the approved simple answers being, "It's good, it's okay," or "It's busy."
Now, notice what is conspicuously absent from those options.
That's that.
There is no option for I am experiencing a profound existential crisis about my career.
Right, or, my day is a labyrinth of minor inconveniences.
Exactly.
None of that.
Which, okay, this brings up a major point of friction for me. I have to push back on this a bit.
Go for it.
If I just ping you with, "It's busy," or "It's okay," aren't I essentially shutting the conversation down? I mean, it feels dismissive, not connective. Like, if we only use these incredibly simple, almost automated phrases, do we risk sounding like robots just exchanging data packets? It's a completely fair question.
Yeah.
It really is. It can feel dismissive if your tone of voice is flat or hostile.
Sure, tone matters.
But grammatically, functionally, what's fascinating here is that the robotic nature you're sensing is actually the entire point.
Wait, really? The point is to sound robotic.
Well, not in a negative dystopian way. But these simple phrases aren't meant to be deep, revealing poetry. They are pure social utility.
Okay, I think I see what you mean.
They are low stress, universally understood building blocks. They safely open the door to further conversation without demanding a massive emotional toll right off the bat.
So it's more about the mechanism than the meaning.
Exactly. Think of it like a server pinging another server on a network.
Okay, nerd alert, but I love it.
Right. When a computer sends a ping, it's not sending the whole database. It's just sending a tiny packet of data that says, are you there? Are we connected? Are you receiving?
Oh, wow.
When someone asks, how is your day? And you say, it's busy, you are signaling that you belong to the same social fabric. You understand the rules of engagement. You're proving that the connection is active.
Ah, so it's not about the depth of the data. It's literally just proving the line is open and functioning.
Precisely. If you dump a complex, grammatically perfect, deeply emotional response onto a casual waste, hey, the connection actually breaks.
Right, it's like a system overload.
Yes. The social contract is breached. The simplicity protects both speakers. It lowers the stakes. It preserves our cognitive load so we can focus on reading body language, eye contact, tone.
You know, I want you, the listener, to think about your own morning today. When the barista at the coffee shop asked how you were doing, did you tell them about your looming deadline at work or, the fight you had with your partner?
Probably not.
No, you probably deployed one of these exact foundational phrases. And you didn't do it because you lack vocabulary. You did it because you understand the invisible architecture of that moment. You don't build a house by starting with the chandelier, right? You pour the concrete. Hello, I'm good, it's busy. That's the concrete.
And once that concrete is poured and you've verified that the network is up and running, you can actually stand on it.
Right, you can move from the initial contact to something a bit more structural.
Which brings us to how we start defining ourselves in these interactions.
Yeah, because establishing that you survived the morning and that your day is good or busy, well, that's just the warm-up. The conversation naturally requires some substance to keep going. What actually makes up that good or busy day?
You have to start sharing the mechanics of your existence.
Exactly. The framework of a person's life, their routine. And the source details a very specific, almost rhythmic morning sequence. It goes like this. I wake up at 7. I eat breakfast. I go to work. I come home.
Very elemental.
Very. And it gives distinct options for students too, like I go to school or I study English. And then it provides the foundational questions you need to actually extract this information from the other person.
Like, what do you do?
Yes, what do you do? Leading to the answer, I work in an office. And where do you work? Leading to, I work in a city.
The progression here might look basic on the page, but structurally, it is incredibly efficient.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Look at how fast the source moves from isolated, solitary I statements like, I wake up, to establishing one's place in the broader society.
It's quite elite when you think about it.
It is. Within 4 incredibly brief sentences, you go from waking up in your private bed to being in an office in a city. You are placing yourself on the map for the other person.
And this raises an important question. Why do we do that? What do you do in the morning such a critical piece of our daily social scripting? I mean, the source answers it simply with, I wake up at 7 to drink coffee. But why state the obvious? Obviously, everyone wakes up.
Yeah, if someone asks what I do in the morning, saying I wake up feels almost comically redundant.
It does if you're only looking at the literal definition of the words. But socially, it isn't just a language exercise. It is how human beings establish common ground and synchronize their realities.
Synchronize their realities. I like that.
By stating these universal rhythmic actions, waking, eating, working, sleeping, we assure each other that we are operating on the same clock.
I wake up at 7. It's so definitive, puts a timestamp on your reality.
Exactly. When you tell someone you work in an office in a city or that you study English, you are giving them the physical and temporal dimensions of your life. You are offering them a shared rhythm.
Right.
Even across massive cultural or linguistic divides, the cycle of waking, consuming sustenance, and engaging in labor or study is universal. The source recognizes that you don't need complex vocabulary to access that shared humanity.
It's literally exchanging coordinates. I am here. I am doing this. I am on this schedule. And because the grammar is stripped completely down, just subject, verb, object, the coordinates are transmitted perfectly clearly. There's no static on the line.
No static at all. And by establishing that baseline of we both wake up, we both work, it builds a secure bridge to the next phase of human connection.
Right, because establishing that you survived the morning commute and that you work in an office, well, that isn't enough to actually build a relationship, is it?
No, it just proves you're both functioning members of society.
Yeah, you have to reveal a bit of your humanity. You have to move past the mechanical parts of the day. Routine and work represent the gears, but true connection happens when we share what brings us joy, or at the very least, what sustains us.
Sustenance and leisure. The great equalizers.
Yes. The source logically pivots right from work and school into food and free time. And the vocabulary it provides here is just wonderfully elemental. We get sentences like, I eat rice, I eat bread, I drink coffee, I drink tea.
It's beautiful in its simplicity.
It doesn't bother teaching the learner how to say, I'd like a non-fat iced matcha latte with a pump of sugar-free vanilla.
Thank goodness.
Right. It gives you the absolute elemental building blocks of sustenance across the globe. Rice, bread, coffee, tea.
It's focusing on high-frequency, universally recognizable concepts. If you learn the word for bread, you can communicate with almost anyone on Earth about a shared human need.
Let me actually play the role of the learner for a second here to test this out. Let's role play one of the exact exchanges from the source. Okay, I'll ask you. What do you eat for breakfast?
Eat toast and eggs.
Nice.
See?
It just works. It feels totally natural. It's a completely frictionless exchange.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, by mastering these highly specific yet universally understood nouns and verbs like toast, eggs, coffee, a learner suddenly gains access to the most common topics of human bonding.
Wow, yeah.
Sharing a meal, or even just discussing the mechanics of a meal, is a foundational bonding ritual in every culture on the planet. You don't need to discuss fine dining. Toast and eggs is enough to say, I'm a human who eats just like you.
It really is. And the source applies that exact same frictionless logic to free time. It poses the question, what do you do after work? And the answers are so soothingly simple, it's almost a relief to hear.
What are they?
I relax, I watch TV, I listen to music, I read a book.
Notice the transition there. It's a shift from the external productive world back to the internal personal world. You go out to the office in the city, you do your labor, and then you retreat. You relax. You watch TV.
I actually love that I relax is positioned as an active thing you do.
Yeah, that's true.
Like in our modern hustle culture, we always feel like we have to be doing something productive. We have to have a side hustle or a complex hobby. But here, I relax is an activity in and of itself. It requires no justification.
That's a great observation. It's giving the speaker permission to simply exist.
And again, if I just tell you I listen to music, I don't need to explain the complex neurobiology of why certain chord progressions soothe my central nervous system after a hard day.
Please don't.
Right. I don't even need to tell you what genre I'm listening to. The simple phrase, I listen to music, is enough for you to look at me, recognize the shared need for decompression, and say, I understand.
Because you are speaking the language of shared human experience. The grammatical simplicity directly mirrors the simplicity of the underlying human need. We all need to eat, we all need to work, and we all need to rest. By keeping the language simple, the source ensures that the focus remains on the shared connection, not on the speaker's ability to conjugate difficult verbs.
So if you're listening to this, think about how these modules work in your own life. We've gathered all these individual puzzle pieces today.
Hold pieces.
Yeah, we have the low-stress greetings, the daily status checks, the morning routines, the work locations, the food, and the leisure activities. How do these pieces actually stack together in the real world?
That is the culmination of the entire framework, assembling the puzzle.
Exactly. The source calls this the full daily conversation. And it's brilliant because it just meticulously stacks everything we've talked about sequentially.
Let's hear it.
Let me walk you through the exact structure the source uses to show how this works in practice. So, person A says, hi. Person B replies, hello, how are you? Person A says they are good and immediately bounces the ball back to keep the connection alive. How is your day?
They are establishing the reciprocal loop, the basic rhythm of a social volley.
Right. Then person B says their day is good and gives that first location coordinate. I work today. Person A, now having a piece of data to work with, asks, what do you do in the morning?
Natural follow-up.
Yep. Person B answers with the routine. I wake up at 7 and drink coffee. Person A validates this shared reality with a nice and asks the next logical question, transitioning from work to leisure, what do you do after work?
And bringing it home.
And person B concludes the arc with, I go home and relax.
It is a perfectly choreographed dance. Every step naturally follows the one before it.
It really is. The source notes how powerful the simple sequence is. But here's my question for you. Does anyone actually talk like this outside of an ESL classroom? If I literally just say those exact phrases, isn't it a bit clinical?
It might look clinical on paper, sure, stripped of tone, facial expressions, and body language. But imagine overhearing that exact exchange in a cafe or an elevator.
Okay.
You wouldn't think, oh, those people are speaking textbook English. You'd just think they were two colleagues catching up. You wouldn't even register the words themselves because the structure is so deeply ingrained in our social expectations.
Because it's frictionless.
Exactly. Which proves the underlying philosophy of the source material. You do not need complex grammar to have a meaningful multi-turn dialogue. What you need is a modular approach. You need interlocking pieces.
Oh, like Lego bricks.
Precisely like Lego bricks. I wake up as a brick. It easily connects to at 7, i.e. connects to toast.
Yeah, I see that.
Once you have the individual bricks, you can build the structure however you need it for that specific day. And the source emphasizes how to make this structure totally solid. It gives a clear directive. Practice every day. Speak every day.
It's about building muscle memory, isn't it? Like learning to play a chord on a guitar.
Yes. When you are in a real-life situation, maybe you're at a networking event or you're traveling in a country where you barely speak the language, you do not have the time or the cognitive bandwidth to conjugate irregular verbs in your head.
Definitely not.
You need the muscle memory to kick in so that when someone says, "How are you?" the "I'm good" and "you"
Yeah.
reflex fires automatically.
You don't think about where to put your fingers on the guitar strings, you just play the chord.
Exactly. That automation is what removes the anxiety from communication. It frees up your brain. If you aren't panicking about your grammar, you can actually pay attention to the person standing in front of you. You can notice if they look tired or happy or stressed.
It's so freeing to think about it that way. The simplicity isn't a limitation, it's a feature. It's the very thing that allows the actual authentic human connection to shine through the language.
It's the concrete foundation that lets you comfortably inhabit the house. Without that simple, solid base, any complex conversation you try to build on top of it will just collapse under its own weight.
Okay, we've been on quite a journey today through what seemed, at first glance, like the most basic material imaginable.
It really did.
We started with a low-stress SACE. Hey, we navigated through the mechanical, universal routines of 7 a.m. wake-ups and office work, and we landed in the shared, comforting humanity of toast, eggs, and relaxing in front of the TV.
A full, rich human day.
Yeah.
Encapsulated perfectly in just a handful of high-frequency verbs and nouns.
So what does this all mean? For you, listening right now, maybe you are a native speaker who takes these daily conversational ping-pong matches completely for granted.
Most of us do.
Right. You've never thought about the invisible architecture of your morning coffee order, or maybe you are actively learning a new language, or you just want to become a more effective, less anxious communicator in your own life.
Which is a great goal.
Whatever your situation, there is immense value in mastering the simple truth of your daily routine. We don't always need to wear the tuxedo. We don't always need to drive the manual transmission and show off the engine. Most days, the automatic transmission, the simple, frictionless exchange of shared reality, is exactly what the situation calls for.
The profound is very often hidden right in plain sight, inside the mundane.
I love that. And I want to leave you with something to chew on. At the very end of our source text, it throws out a community challenge to the learners. It asks the deceptively simple question, what do you do every morning?
A great question.
Now, the source obviously wants you to answer that to practice your English vocabulary, but I want you to look at that question with a bit of a philosophical spin today.
Stripping the mechanics away and looking at the core truth.
Exactly. Don't just think about the grammar. Think about the reality of your answer. What do you do every morning? Think about how those simple morning actions, waking up, making the coffee, eating the toast, heading to work, actions which can be described perfectly in just 3 or 4 incredibly basic words.
Right.
Think about how those simple, repetitive actions ultimately define the foundation of who you are as a person. The chandelier might be flashy and get all the attention, but it's those simple, mundane, concrete blocks you quietly lay every single morning that actually hold your whole house up. Think about that until our next deep dive.